Wanted Weapons of Fate is a movie tie-in game. Honestly, it's been so long since studios made those, I think we're at a point where people are starting to forget how awful they actually were.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Finding a tie-in game that wasn't complete dreck was like finding a unicorn that fought kittens and marzipan. It doesn't exist. Yes, I know about X-Men Origins Wolverine. No, it's not that good. In fact, it's incredibly overhyped, and what they did to the man who shares my namesake is the kind of thing that gets you haunted by the ghosts of your ancestors and mine. The point is, it was 2008, and Fortnite hadn't been invented yet, which meant if a publisher wanted to cash in on a movie, they had to hire the cheapest studio that couldn't directly be called slobjank that Europe could provide, and churn out something that which barely qualified as a video game. And that's how we got Wanted Weapons of Fate. It's a 2009 game that based on the movie with Angelina Jolie and James McAvoy, right before he got famous for playing Charles Xavier in X-Men First Class and whatever the hell this thing was. Now, notably when a studio was hired to make a tie-in game, the strategy was to give them as little money and time as possible in order to crank out a minimum viable product that you could rush to shelves in time for release, in order to cash in on any hype the game might have had by synergizing with the movie. That didn't happen here. Weapons of Fate dropped almost a year after the movie's release in 2009. And on top of that, instead of being a low-effort slop that was bereft of passion, hey, I've played Underworld: The Eternal War, trust me, I know garbage when I see it. We got a slick stop-and-pop shooter with bullet-curving mechanics that were pretty damn unique for the genre. But in spite of all that, the game never made a mark on the zeitgeist, and has faded from history in the intervening years. It all just begs the question, what the hell went wrong? Well, sit down and lock in, student, because we're playing the whole game from start to finish. It's not gonna take that long, you can beat another 3 hours on a casual playthrough. To find out the answer, we're playing the 360 version on original hardware, so just get ready for all the screen tearing throughout this playthrough. I'm not kidding, we are less than a minute in and the game has already found a way to tear the screen during pre-rendered cutscenes. I'm not a game developer, but how do you even do that? It doesn't matter. What's important is that right off the bat, we're introduced to Wesley from the movie, except plot twist, it's actually a sequel to the film. Yeah, instead just trying to adapt the movie and call it a day, Swedish developer GRIN made the GigaChad play of trying to make a sequel to the film, which honestly, I can't even think of ever happening outside of the thing on PS2. Valid play, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. Once Wesley's done having strangely prophetic dreams, he wakes up to find his apartment being raided by fraternity goons. They're the League of Evil Assassins from the movie, who are stealing a MacGuffin out of a picture frame that we need to make the video game happen. Wes gives chase to the goon squads, and we are off to the races. The game wastes no time letting you know this is a stop-and-pop shooter, which is a genre popularized by Gears of War, which is really just dashed in the last decade or so. Movement and traversal is the de jure for today's discerning gamer, so the idea of constantly stopping dead in your tracks to pivot and shoot like your garden sprinkler is antithetical at best for any publisher or developer. The game gives you a pistol to dispatch your faceless adversaries, and that is it. God, I wish I was kidding. I took Ninja Gaiden 3 a task for only letting you play with a dragon sword in my previous video, and somehow I'd managed to pick a follow-up game that did exactly the same goddamn thing. How on earth do you release a shooter in 2009 where your only weapon for the entire playthrough is a pistol of all things? Yeah, I know there's turret and sniper sections, but they don't count. Also, later in the playthrough, Wiz's dad, Cross, will get auto pistols in a flashback sequence, but they're still pistols, so do not fight me on this. Anyway, I hope you're really fond of the art of marksmanship with that 9mm, because it's all you're going to be using for the lion's share of the game. No grenades, no heavy weapons, just the pistol. Good grief. The game wants you to settle in and get used to some of its bespoke mechanics like cover firing and traversing from cover to cover. So we are banned from Benny bullets just yet. Instead, we'll be pushing ahead through rooftop locations, looking for the riot shield goon who's got the scrap of who gives a damn that Wes is chasing. That means blowing your way through legions of his equally forgettable friends until we catch up. But here's where the game goes for style points. Every so often, the game throws you into a scripted sequence where you'll jump from cover to cover, play off Hong Kong-style gunplay as you dispatch the soon-to-be deceased with zesty flair. And I'm not even kidding when I say it's pretty damn fun. I just wish the devs have found a way to include those kinds of actions organically, instead of having them spread out through a handful of encounters throughout the game. Hope you enjoyed that little respite from shooting waves of bad guys with your one and only weapon, because with our token break for the gameplay, it's back to the business of shooting fraternity cops, and believe me, business is good. It's about here that we take a break from slaughtering legions of fraternity assassins. I mean, they are French, so it's not like anyone's gonna miss them. To stop and wax poetic with the man at the top of our metaphorical to-do list. If you've been paying attention, by now you will probably realize that Wesley is absolutely not voiced by James McAvoy.
If you're not such a bitch, would feel sorry for you.
That runs in the family, shit pants.
Which is interesting because the casting of the game is a real mixed bag. None of the big names return to reprise their roles. Though, to be fair to Angelina Jolie, her character Minecrafted herself, so that does make casting her again challenging. No, I'm not giving you a spoiler warning for a 17-year-old movie. If you're gonna watch it, you would have done it by now. Also, it's not very good anyway. Just look at that 6.7 rating on IMDb. It's not exactly screaming life-changing. We'll get into casting later. Point is that cutscenes in this game are a little weird. They mostly exist to make the player feel like a badass, as Wesley quips with the kind of language that edgy teens in the late 2000s would still have cringed at. They don't really move the plot forward because this game has less of an actual story and more just a connected series of plot points that exist to present what a skinwalker might assume would be a video game. I mean, credit where it's due for trying to continue a story of the movie instead of rehashing it, but we are absolutely not winning any awards here for work that's on display. It doesn't matter anyway, this is Weapons of Fate, which means we're here to shoot bad guys and look damn good doing it. Chase him across a few more rooftops and you'll corner him in the construction site for the game's first boss fight. If you figured a game that only lets you use one kind of weapon for its entire runtime would force you into using gimmicks to spice up the boss fights, your free taco is in the mail. Because here, you're only capable of damaging the SWAT leader by blindly firing around a corner, which somehow is better than just shooting at him and forcing him into cover. It's a mechanic you'll never use for anything except the rare handful of times a rat shield enemy will spawn. And be grateful for that because it's slow, annoying, and not particularly fun. With him taken to Pound Town, Wesley forgets the most important part of interrogating your hostage is not killing them right away. Before we get introduced to the 5th member of the Beauty and the Beast unit, who's here to tease him with the MacGuffin and reveal the existence of the Paris fraternity. But there's no time to dwell on that because bullets are not gonna shoot themselves, and if the plot of this game is not gonna make sense, I've beaten it twice and I'm still not sure what's happening. Then I'm not gonna try explaining it either. Instead, we get a flashback with Cross, Wesley's father, who's become the target of the fraternity by bringing Wesley into the world. So it's time to take them out of it. Your dad is clearly cooler than you are because he gets to use dual-wield pistols, which mechanically makes no difference. The cool is cool, and I am not gonna complain. But the real star of the show is his ability to curve bullets. Yeah, it's time for that trademark mechanic that the movie made, so there. And you know what? It's actually pretty damn fun. You get to curve one bullet at a time, as evidenced by the red, what is that, a bullet? I'm not really into guns. Anyway, red glow means good and gray means bad. Except for when you're aiming at bad guys, in which case red means bad and gray means good. Yeah, they really didn't think this through very well. Curving a bullet around a corner is an almost guaranteed kill on any target. And while curving a bullet expends that charge, killing someone refills it instantly. And honestly, it is great. It really speeds up the combat, makes you feel every bit the bullet-slinging super assassin the movie makes the heroes out to be. Plus, you'll randomly get a cutaway shot of the camera following your bullet Fallout style, like you've gotten a 100% chance in bats of killing them, which is just as satisfying here as it is there. It's a great way to get around enemies who are behind cover, which is a good thing, because this game's relationship with cover is ride or die under any circumstance. I am not kidding. When either you or the CPU is behind cover, you are effectively...
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Even if your reticle turns red aiming at exposed goodies. That's just anti-bullet curving propaganda because you are just wasting metal slinging shots at your faceless enemies. This game gave you a mechanic for shooting bad guys, and by God, you are going to use it. Fill enough pine boxes with bad guy bits and you'll be thrown into a turd section.
Which was the style at the time.
And holy hell, this is one of the worst turd sections ever put to polygons. Your gun can spit lead at a frightening pace, so can your adversaries. Which means you'll be spending most of your time hiding and recovering health instead of perforating these petricidal Pindix. Also, you can't see a damn thing while you're in cover, so good luck lining up your shots. The environment does contain an element of destructibility, so that's nice, I suppose. I sure hope that wasn't too much excitement for you, because straight after that we're thrown into a sniper section. which, given how you're rude to spot and unable to move while being blessed with infinite ammo, makes it a tart section with extra steps. We're clearing the way for Wesley's mother, but she never really seems to be in any danger, no matter how many baddies are on screen. Which I suppose is a blessing, since nobody likes an escort mission where your target gets their ticket punched. So I'll take the W where I can get it. We get a little plot with it being revealed that the man called the Immortal was the one who killed our mother, because Wesley was forbidden to be born because reasons. Code or something, it's never explained. What is important is that the Paris fraternity is in Chicago to retrieve the Loom of Fate, a device used by the assassins in the movie to determine who their next target should be. At this point, I'm not even sure why Wesley cares about stopping them, since in the movie he was totally fine with killing targets determined by the Loom. It was only when he found out he was being lied to about which targets were real or manufactured that he got his panties in a bunch. But the Immortal is there, probably. So that's as good a reason as any to chase down those croissant-crunching creeps or reduce France's GDP by whatever the fraternity is playing down. This takes us back to the site of the movie's climax in Chicago, which, I'm not gonna lie, had a really awesome shootout. So I'm not complaining. Wesley is back in the driver's seat, and now we're armed with the ability to curve bullets like dear old dad, which you sadly can't curved hit long-distance targets. It feels like a deliberate decision by the devs to force you into closer combat with specific enemies, which I appreciate for the sake of not letting the player hide behind a single box and kill everyone, but I also hate because I can't hide behind a single box and kill everyone. Fight your way into Chicago Fraternity HQ and you'll be treated to another one of those highly scripted, overly stylized, slow motion sequences as we fight our way through the ruins of the Loom of Fate. It's a nice little set piece with the reams of thread and sun shafts flooding the place to make it feel like something grander than just being a giant, unused factory. Around us back, chatting with the Viscera cleanup detail, who apparently have taken an interest in Fox, the recently unalived assassin played by Angelina Jolie. It is stated that they can't find her body, so perhaps they were setting up her return at some point, given how the movie only infers that she failed the Darwin challenge. It's also the only sap we get for our next boss fight against the Russian, whose gimmick is that you just have to make it to the back of the hall in one piece.
The One Piece is real!
Because once you make it there, he just keeps popping out from behind cover of the same box so you can shoot him without moving an inch. Yeah, and this isn't the showdown with Olga we got in MGS2. Turns out he has a tattoo on his arm, which Pekorsky tells Wesky is the first part of 3, which is needed for the fraternity to transport the Loom of Fate to a new location. Not sure why we're transporting the Loom, which was clearly destroyed in the movie, but the video game needs to happen, so let's just set that aside. Flashbacks are back, and this time dear old dad just happens to be on the same plane as the Immortal and his crew, with no explanation given as to why or how. It's just one of those things. So he's decided the best way to get off the plane is to just mutter his way through it till he gets to the parachutes, which is as sound a plan as any. We've got 2 adrenaline stocks now for double the death dealing, which honestly makes no difference, since killing someone with a single curl bullet instantly replenishes that stock. You could use it for slow motion camera switching, which we'll get to, don't worry. But instead, I'd rather talk about how this level actually winds up being weirdly hilarious, but also extremely practical. Because if you shoot a fire extinguisher next to a door hatch, it will blow the door open and suck out any bad guys in the immediate area. I actually love this, because besides the hilarity of watching bad guys getting sucked into the void every time you do it, despite the fact that depressurization does not work that way, it's a neat little gameplay mechanic that rewards lateral thinking. Want to just skip your 234th shootout? Here, shoot the fire extinguisher. No yellow paint or tutorial markers, just a little surprise for anyone prepared to think a little outside the box. The game could use more of those. Blast your way through the cockpit and you'll face down with the Immortal, who is... wait a second. Is that fucking Peter Stormare? Renowned character actor Peter Stormare? The Replacer himself? He wasn't even in the original movie. He's fighting you and the screen tearing long enough to taunt you with the fact that he's got a bullet with Wesley's name on it, along with how he's killed the pilot and has the only parachute. This leads us to going back to where we just came from with a smooth little QT sequence. Blasting bad guys, the plane crashes, but is also filled with fire because that's just what planes do with air crashing. Make it all the way to the back and now Blood Cross will drive a sports car to safety, because honestly that is far from the most egregious abuse of my disbelief that this series has pulled off up until this point. Snap back to reality, as we clearly lost gravity, and Wes is still getting exposition dumps from Kaspersky about how he's being a fraternity ammunition buyer, who might lead to a second piece of the Loom Code. The scene starts with Wesley remarking how Chicago is his favorite place to snipe in, which is a weird line to throw in because he's only been an assassin for a few days at this point, meaning that it's really the only place he's ever sniped in. The game has a weird habit of giving its characters what it thinks is badass dialogue, but in Wesley's case, it just makes him feel like a complete lunatic because in the context of the movie, he's only been fully fledged as an assassin for a few days, meaning that the train that took him from average Joe to murderous psychopath had zero chill and no brakes. You can make the argument that he always was an awful person and his life as a normie was just a form of repression, but that doesn't exactly make him more likable either. Speaking of breaks, we get to run through a cavernous office filled with cubicles and other painfully dull decor designed to remind Wesley of the life that he left behind. Side-by before we go any further. I actually love going through ordinary environments and games from this era because it just feels like a time capsule to a world that no longer exists. 2009 was 17 years ago. I just want to go back to an era that doesn't remind me of my own mortality constantly, while the world gradually shapes itself into the kind of dystopia that Cyberpunk was supposed to be a warning against, not a guidebook. Crushing weight of reality aside, we're already up to our next boss fight with Brummel, who is, fun fact, voiced by the same man who played the Ghost Smith in the movie, despite the fact that they are completely different characters. Gimmicks are back on the menu, this time with Brummel only being vulnerable to curved bullets, because when he gets hit by them, they force him out of cover, allowing you to get several more shots off. Beam though, and Brummel is weirdly okay with you just cutting his arm off to get the code, despite the fact that camera phones were definitely a thing back in the aughts. Doesn't matter anyway, because he's filled the building with explosive rats. Just watch the movie, I'm not gonna explain them. And we've gotta fight our way out, because bad guys have nothing better to do than to stand around waiting for Wesley to show up as the building burns down around their ears. Wesley proves he still hasn't learned how to use a door by diving out of window, before we're back to reunite with Petrovsky for more exposition as the story starts to get very confusing. Wesley questions how the fraternity knew that Petrovsky was in Chicago, which is a very strange question to be asking considering that he knew the fraternity was in Chicago to meet him for the buy that he brought Wesley along to, which had clearly been organized in advance. I think what the game is trying to do is build paranoia that Petrovsky cannot be trusted, since he clearly has his own designs on the MacGuffin that was stolen from the picture frame at the beginning of the game, feeling it is something of value to him and the fraternity that he still belongs to. But for the life of me, I can't figure out why Wesley thinks his presence in Chicago is a smoking gun. We get dumped into another cross flashback where he is arguing with Sloan about his allegiances to the fraternity, which are cut short by an attack from the Nazi French band again. Only this time your dad is packing heat because he bought his dual automatic pistols which fire a hail of explosive bullets when you curve them. It's a guaranteed kill on whoever your target is, as well as anyone in the immediate vicinity. So to balance it out, it consumes 2 adrenaline per shot along with a decent chunk of ammunition. But more concerning than that is the fact that we are back in the textile factory courtyard, which means the game is already repeating levels. Inside, we get to defend the Loom of Fate before Cross has to dive under a table to avoid an assassin, which in turn reveals a hidden kill order from the Loom of Fate. It's here the storytelling gets even more murky, because given Cross's reaction, it looks like the kill order is for Sloan himself, revealing that Sloan has been fabricating and suppressing kill orders from the Loom, which was a pivotal moment in the movie when Sloan revealed that all the assassins in Chicago were supposed to be dead. Taking exception to the idea of deleting their own System 32, Sloan went off the rails and started making up kill orders in exchange for dump trucks full of money. It makes sense that this might be the point in the timeline when Cross goes rogue upon discovering the truth, but it also means Sloan is really terrible at hiding deeply incriminating evidence. The answers get more confusing when he goes to confront Sloan, who states it's not the first time one of his assassins has turned on him, possibly hinting at Elise, Wesley's mother. Then she really should have told Cross that Sloan was making up kill orders and using the fraternity for his own ends, possibly while he was fucking her through the mattress. Dirty secrets are the best pillow talk. Now he's persona non grata with the Chicago fraternity as well, meaning that we get to pull off another sick QTE sequence before just blowing up the textile factory again. Seriously, his bloodline have a vendetta against it like the Belmonts do for Dracula. In a turn sequence where you just need to run out timer. He just jumps onto a train after that where he confronts the Immortal again, and once they're done slinging bullets at one another, manages to blow half their place's face off because the plot demanded that he not just be able to react to the shot for some reason. despite doing that twice previously. We return to the present, where Wesley questions why his father never told him any of this so he could avoid being bamboozled by Sloane and the fraternity, which Petrovsky just decides not to answer. Instead, we're offering him a map to his father's burial site. He also makes a vague allusion to Cross's mask having blue eyes, which makes Wesley remember the mask in his dad's safe house at the beginning of the game. This might be a hint that his dad hid the killer suit there, since Wesley is wearing it in the next chapter. Now we're in the Pyrenees Mountains in Europe, I guess, which is lovely this time of year if you're here to kill loads of assassins and literally nothing else. We've also hit the part of the game where combat is sadly starting to slow down. We start to run to enemies who can withstand single curve bullet shots, just be forced out of cover for a follow-up attack. It drains your adrenaline and slows the pace of combat since you're taking longer to kill individual enemies, a problem which will unfortunately only get worse from here on out. Boss time again, and this time we're up against Arana, who we get to drop a little suggestive dirty talk on before the fight gets started proper. The mechanic for this fight is slow motion dashing between cover, allowing you to hit her several times before she pops back out of sight. Literally, the only time you'll ever use this mechanic is around boss fights that demand it, because there's almost no cause for using it in encounters with regular enemies. It costs 2 adrenaline per dash, meaning that each dash needs to kill at least 2 people to make it worth the investment. This might be less of an issue if enemies stand out in the open, but more often than not, they're just tucked behind walls of Jericho that make up their cover, so chances of actually hitting them back there are next to 0. But here you just have to use it cause there is no time to hit her otherwise. Once she's beaten, you'll find her dangling from the guard railing, clutching the MacGuffin that Wesley has been searching for because, honestly, I can't tell you, that is a stupid thing to do. He also doesn't cut her head off for the final code or do anything to preserve it, so unless he has an addictive memory, there's no way he's gonna find the loom. But hey, he's making some deeply inappropriate jokes about banging her as she falls to her death, so I guess that's something. Instead, he's figured out that the French fraternity were planning to move the loom to the French fraternity, which is obviously the first place anyone would think to look. But Wesley is an assassin, not a rocket surgeon, so we're gonna give him a pass. One of those has to be good. From here, Wesley needs to go visit his dad's tomb because there's literally no reason. Petrovsky mentioned that it might give him some answers for why his father never told him about the fraternity, but it absolutely does not do that. But we'll get to that. Anyways, this place is full of guards too because it is a video game and we need something to shoot. So get ready for a lot of what we've been doing already up to this point because we're still rocking pistols and that is not going to change by the time the credits roll, which is not far from now actually. I mentioned it earlier, but this game is criminally short. Like really, really short. You can beat this game casually in under 3 hours on your first attempt. And honestly, I'd be mad about that if it didn't cost me $20 on eBay 17 years later. But 3 hours generally feels like a good length because 10 to 12 hours, the main story you'd see in most other games, would be an absolute slog in Weapons of Fate, given how painfully shallow and repetitive the gameplay is. Wesley stumbles upon an open chamber featuring the graves of some of the fraternity's most revered assassins, as awed and humbled by their presence, remarking about how he is among the royalty of death.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
No, I wish I was kidding. It's a weird setup just to stick in yet another shootout like every other one you've encountered up to this point. Make it through that, you'll find dear old dad's final resting place, where he's mummified and stuffed in an ancient sarcophagus, which is weird since he only died a few days ago, tops. Wes has a quick heart-to-heart with him before determining that the immortal is still alive somehow, despite having no evidence whatsoever to reach that conclusion. He rips off his dad's guns and we go off to sell business on Frenchie's home turf in a place called Mount St. Miller, which is not a real place. That is probably a nod to the comics creator, Mark Miller. This game feels like we're missing half the story because it got shoved out the door before being finished, which is entirely possible given how studio GRIN shut the doors soon after release, $30 million in debt and citing unbearable cash flow issues, forcing their hand. There's a really good chance this game was just cobbled together with whatever was completed at the time and sent out to die, because it would have never been finished otherwise. We are off to find the immortal in a church for what will no doubt be a romantic rendezvous, but naturally we had to fight our way through a whole city full of bad guys to get there. This is where the slowed out of combat really reaches an absolute crawl. Not only is always every enemy effectively immune to one-shot kills unless you use the shrapnel storm ability from your dad's guns, but you also get pushed into a set piece where you need to avoid a sniper's fire while running through a kill box to try and catch him. But he always runs away before you reach the end, meaning you'll have to repeat the process multiple times. But if I'm being honest, I felt a lot of enjoyment while I was doing this. No, wait, what was that other word? Tedium. Anyway, kill him and you'll get another sniper section, because the game knows you're about to return to Blockbuster on the same day you rented it, so it's gotta do something to drag out the playtime. Of course, the front door is locked, so rather than just, I don't know, shoot it, Wes decides to just fight his way through the catacombs below instead. It's here you encounter the worst enemy in the whole game. Guys in black trench coats who can dodge bullets like they're in the Matrix. They start spawning everywhere and are the absolute worst to kill unless you're prepared to drop a Shrapnel Storm on them. That fast-paced gameplay you felt a rush enjoying early on is just a fleeting memory at this point, as you spend more time cowering in cover than Mux and Dom ever did while searching for his wife. Nobody cares about your wife, Dom. Stop asking. Worst part is, we're in the penultimate session the game has to offer, and there's just nothing going on. At least slow fights as you run around green and brown corridors, praying to any god who will listen that this will be over soon. I'm not even kidding when I say I opened up a new tab in a browser to find that clip, only to come back to the VOD I'm writing the script from to see that Wes is still pinned down and hasn't moved from where I left him. Make it till church, you can smell the desperation creeping in as Wes is forced to navigate a section of waist-high boxes and piers, rather than just make a beeline straight for the exit. The game is really throwing everything it can at you to slow you down, and while also trying to do it with the least effort expended possible. But if you can push your way through that meat grinder, you'll make it to the bell tower, which is the game's final section. All we're doing here is just running circles as we ascend the bell tower, killing enough pastry pounders to fill the crypts below twice over. But with that done, we've made it. Showdown with the Immortal, who is rocking a lovely remodeling of his face courtesy of Lost Encounter with Daddy Dearest. It's here the game gives you its big twist, showing that it was never the Immortal who killed your mother, Elise. It was actually Cross.
What?
Acting on orders from the Loom itself for violating the code of the fraternity. She also drops the MacGuffin code after Cross shoots her, which when you think about it just makes absolutely no goddamn sense. Think about this for a second. If the kill order she dropped was a scrap that we saw at the start of the game, we can probably assume it was a kill order for Wesley himself that she stole, which means it would make sense for the French fraternity to be trying to recover it and kill Wesley. But it also makes no sense because Pequaski lied to us about it by saying it was the Immortal who killed Elise, and turned sitting us on this goddamn wild goose chase halfway across the world to kill the Immortal. If his goal was to help Wesley by having him kill the Immortal who is clearly trying to murder him, why not just say so? If his goal was to retrieve the kill order for fraternity business, why did he bother helping Wesley at all? Why didn't Cross kill Wesley as well? If he was so eager to give Elise the hard goodbye, why would he turn on the French fraternity if he knew the kill order was legitimate? Unless that wasn't as well, because we knew Sloan was forging those at the time. Why did anything that happened in the flashback levels actually happen? Or was Pequaski the world's most unreliable narrator? God, I have no idea what is going on. If someone knows how on earth they can make sense of the plot, please explain it to me in the comments, because I am not ashamed to say that I am completely lost. Anyway, the boss fight with the Immortal is exactly the same as it was with Arata, where you're just diving from cover to cover, shooting him in a slow motion as he pops his head out. Ventilate him enough times and Wes confronts him as he lays dying. For realsies this time. They prattle on about God and fate before Wesley notices his suit has a tear in it. I've tried Googling, searching, and being it, and even asking the AI, and nobody knows what's in the scrap of fabric that is in that tear. It might be kill order, or potentially instructions for building a new loom of fate judging by the diagram. It's too late for me to care anyway, because Wesley just up and shoots him, which ends the game right there. There is an alternate ending in the PC version where the bullet misses and Wesley gets opts to give him a golden shower for some reason. But this is the Academy and we are far too classy for that. Speaking of classy, if for some reason you want to play this game again, there are several unlockables you can get just by finding objects in the world or entering cheat codes, including the ability to play as Jazz from the movie. There exists to be a commentary on how fat women are the absolute worst. Nice. Here's the thing. There is no shortage of videos on YouTube with people absolutely dragging this game for being too short, too repetitive, and a confusing mess with almost no redeeming qualities unless you possess the juvenile sensibilities of a Twitter user. Getting me to call it X is a long wait for trainers not coming. But if you stop to play it, instead of jumping on the hate train, the framework is there, the bones are there. Curving bullets for the first few levels is genuinely fun and satisfying, and a gameplay mechanic that could have really stood out if GRIN had had the time and money to actually make the game properly, instead of rushing it out the door to try and stave off bankruptcy. Picture this game with an expanded arsenal, refined mechanics, and more variety, and we could have had a game that people would have blazed the same way they do Wolverine's adamantium claws. Oh, and maybe back off the cringy dialogue, that's not doing anyone any favors. Point is, if you got 3 hours to kill and someone is holding a gun to your head, there are worse ways to spend it than playing Wanted Weapons of Fate. Can't think of any, but I trust you'll figure it out.